In your written testimony in response to some of the chairman's questions, you stated that you were informed of suspicious activity on July the 31st by your chief information officer and went on to discuss that. And you said, I certainly did not know that personal identifying information, PII, had been stolen or have any indication of the scope of the attack. Did you ask him if there had been any personal identifying information that had been obtained?
Congressman, at that time I was informed it was a dispute portal document. Dispute portal document is something that typically houses if a consumer is disputing with us that they've paid off a utility bill, he or she may take a picture of the utility bill. So at that time, that was the conversation.
Not to interrupt, but my question was, did you ask if any PII had been accessed?
No, I did not.
Were you made aware at that point of the Apache Strut patch?
No, sir, I was not.
Had you had any meetings with your chief information officer or your security department about any of this issue prior to July 31st?
No, Congressman, I did not.
Had you had any meetings with them about any other security information during that time from March until July 31st?
Oh, yes, we would have routine meetings, security reviews, IT reviews.
How often do you have those?
Common due process would be at least quarterly.
And why did you not have this discussion come up? And did you have, obviously that's more than a quarter, so how many meetings did you have between that time of March the 8th until July the 31st with your security team?
Make sure I understand your question. Why didn't...
No, how many meetings did you have during that time from March the 8th until July the 31st?
I don't have that information with me. If that's important, we can get that.
Well, how many do you remember? Do you remember any of those?
So normally we'd have IT reviews at least quarterly and security reviews at least quarterly. And then you'd augment that on an as-needed basis.
Well, with those meetings and those timelines of March the 8th until July 31st, we are covering into 3 quarters, not a total of 9 months, but you touch into 3 quarters of that year. And at any point in any of that, did you have any information about this going on?
No, sir, I did not.
All right. In your testimony, you indicate that the security department ran scans in March for the vulnerability but failed to identify it. Can you explain how this is possible, and why was there never any confirmation of anybody coming back and checking to see, okay, we have this identified information, there was a failure at someone on the team to identify this, that it was being used, that the software was even being used? Was there no one coming in to verify that? Do you have any outside person prior to the ones that you hired to look at this?
Congressman, we get notifications routinely, the IT team, the security team do, to apply applications. This individual, as I mentioned earlier, did not communicate to the right level to apply the patch. The follow-up was, as you mentioned.
You said this individual? Mm-hmm. So you had one person responsible for this?
There's an owner of the patch process. There's a communication that comes out from security. It's a broad-based communication. Once they receive notification from a software company, or in this case, DHS, they notify appropriate people. Then an individual who owns the patch process cascades that communication. For
everyone that's on your Equifax team, is there anything more important than protecting the PII of the consumers?
No, sir.
Would we identify that as the #1 responsibility of the company and everybody in your company?
We have for years, sir, yes.
Okay. So it just appears, obviously, the job wasn't done. And so we know that, and we're trying to look at this. And I know, too, there was an Equifax spokeswoman who said, we've taken short-term remediation steps and continue to implement and accelerate long-term security improvements as part of ongoing actions to help prevent this type of incident from happening again. So we have 145.5 million people whose PII has been compromised. How many files do you have in the system?
Worldwide?
Yes, sir.
I think someone mentioned earlier, there's a public number out there of over 800 and some odd million consumers and 100 million companies roughly.
And we know this breach includes some from Canada, some from the UK. Would that be fair to say even at this point?
Congressman, a point of clarification there was some data that we had on, I think it's 7,000 Canadians in the U.S. So the data was in the U.S., same environment. We had some data on UK citizens also in the U.S. That piece is still under investigation.
You know, my home state of Mississippi has 3 million people. 3 million people. Almost 1.4 million files have been breached in my state. That, if you take away people that are minors who don't have a file yet, almost my entire state's going to be impacted. So this is a travesty. It's something that was preventable, we know. And so saying that we want to protect what goes forward doesn't bring us a lot of comfort today. Thank you, and I yield back.